I like to work in my kitchen and I also edit my videos here. And I even have a dedicated kitchen PC for that. Well, PC is a strong word. It's just a bunch of old components in a cardboard box. Some of that has already been used in my leatherback PC. Link is up here if you like. Now I have been told that a crappy PC is called a toaster. Well, a crappy PC in the kitchen, that's called a toaster and needs a case. I still have this old toaster lying around, and just a very short while later, that's my toaster PC.
Like any other toaster, you start it by pushing down the knob, and it softly starts to glow. The intensity of the glow can be regulated with the knob on the front. I don't know when I have last used a DVD, but this project just begged for 2 slot-loading DVD drives in the toast slots. And when you press the eject button, both discs are ejected. The rear looks more like a PC, but when you power it down, it does this.
So, do you like it? There is a button for that. And maybe even subscribe, it would really help me a lot. And now I will show you how it looks on the inside and how I built it.
That's the toaster. It's absurdly large for a toaster, but it's just right for my purposes. Let's see how I get in there. But first, a lot of old breadcrumbs get out. The bottom is bolted on with strange triangle bolts, probably to keep guys like myself from messing with it. Of course, I don't have a screwdriver for that. I was able to unscrew some of the screws with pliers. For others, I melted 3D misprints and PLA and pressed them on. With that, the screws could be unscrewed. After some resistance, I was able to remove the much smaller inner part from the case that does all the toasting work. Here there is an electromagnet that holds the toast insert at the bottom and a spring that moves the toast slices upwards when they are ready. I will recycle both for my project. It's amazing how many crumbs came out of that thing. And a little cleaning can't hurt either. Based on the mini ITX specifications, I used SketchUp to design a framework for the PC components and printed it with my 3D printer. And in green, because that's just my cheap testing material. The final frame will be printed in black later. But to make the frame fit into the toaster case, the opening in the bottom has to be enlarged. First I tried that with the cutting discs on my Dremel. But that only scared the cat and didn't help much otherwise. So it's the angle grinder then. In the back I also had to remove some sheet metal to get to the computer sockets. I didn't realize that the housing of the toaster is really only held together by the 4 screws in the corners and the sheet metal is under tension. So I glued it together again with epoxy glue. I also reinforced the freshly cut edge of the sheet metal with a wooden strip. Then I mounted all the components, tried on the case, found that something didn't fit, changed the design and reprinted. A few times. I also tried using it in this half-finished condition. By the way, this is how the power lever works. When you push the lever down, it activates the microswitch and the PC turns on. This also activates the electromagnet that then grabs the bolt. When you release the lever, the spring pulls it up a little bit so that the microswitch is no longer pressed, but it's still held by the magnet. When you shut the PC down, the electromagnet also turns off and the spring pulls the lever back up. I also wanted the toaster to glow in the characteristic orange. For this I bought orange LED strips. But I didn't want them to flick on and off instantly. I wanted them to fade in and out. Also, the brightness should be adjustable with the knob on the front of the toaster. More by trial and error than by real electronics knowledge, I came up with this circuit. I built it on a prototype PCB. It doesn't look too bad at all. With the trim pots, you can adjust the speed of the fading and the range of the knob on the toaster. Speaking of the knob, it's gone. so I designed a new one and 3D printed it. To make the numbers white, I first greased the upper side to prevent it from taking on the paint. Then I used a touch-up pencil to press white paint into the recessed numbers. After it had dried, I scraped off the excess paint, sanded it down, polished it and finally sprayed it with clear lacquer. It looks okayish now, if you don't look so closely. Now I attach my circuit and the knob to the toaster housing. On this occasion, I also glued one of the LED strips to the inside of the housing. Of course, a PC in a toaster has to have 2 slot-loading DVD drives in the toast slots, don't you think? And of course, they both have to eject their discs when you press the button on the front of the toaster, because that's what that button is for. Therefore, I soldered thin cables to the small PCB in the front of the drives in parallel to the eject button. They will be switched with a relay later. So that the part that can be seen through the toast slots is black when switched off, but glows toasty during operation, I made it transparent and sprayed it only superficially with black spray paint. And now I could start the final assembly. The motherboard is screwed into the bottom part. Then the back part is put on and screwed tight. The power supply and the 60mm fan are attached to it. On the front, the rail for the start lever is attached, which is also the support for the upper part. In this upper part I mounted the optical drives and the SSD, and then it is screwed on. Now the graphics card is inserted with a riser cable. The micro switch is screwed on after some testing to get the correct position. This is the relay for the eject button. The power supply for the relay, the DVD drives and the LED board is wired with Wago terminals. The LEDs are already working. And the eject button too. Yay! The cable connection to the housing is hidden under the handle of the crumb tray. These strips are the connection between the toaster housing and the inner framework, and they should also let light through. Now I put the lid on, and why doesn't it fit now? After a few subtle, cautious design changes, it fit after all. Now only the knob has to be screwed on.
And now I have already edited this video on my toaster, and I'm pretty happy with it. But that's probably not the end of the project. I'm thinking about a hardware upgrade, but that will also require better cooling. If you have ideas on that topic, please post them in the comments. And if you subscribe to this channel and activate the bell, you will be notified when it continues. And in the meantime, why don't you watch some of these videos? See you next time!